All right, let's get to RFK Jr. Some very interesting news with regards to Tulsi Gabbard. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. Tulsi gave an interview actually to ABC News, or at least a statement to ABC News, where she says she turned down his offer to be his running mate. Quote, "It didn't work out." So she said in a statement, quote, "I met with Kennedy several times. We have become good friends. He asked if I would be his running mate. After careful consideration, I respectfully declined." She declined to explain why she turned down the offer, which has not previously been reported. Obviously, she was included on the list, and he eventually went with Nicole Shanahan. He says a person even close to the Kennedy campaign said, quote, "There were definitely meetings, but it didn't work out." She claims we talked to a bunch of people. Tulsi's a rock star, no matter what and all that. But
they don't deny it,
she's not denying it. So affirmatively, he did ask her. I think it was a mistake. I'm not sure that this was. Look, I understand the Nicole Shanahan pick purely from it takes dollars to get on the ballot. So from an actual practical point of view, totally get it. But Tulsi Gabbard actually was elected. I mean, she's much more, I think. I mean, look, Nicole has not given an interview as of yet. From what I looked and researched. By the way, we're asking for it. We'd like to have her here on the show, but she hasn't. She hasn't been as battle tested. I mean, Tulsi's at the very least, she's run for office before. She's been in the public sphere. She knows how to take criticism. You know, she's somebody who, look, you can love her, hate her, whatever. She's given interviews. She goes all over the place. She's comfortable. You know, more in the public eye. And given the fact that RFK is trying to especially capture a lot of the podcast space, this is somebody who's already been all over the podcast space, continues to go on, kind of be in alternative media. So I think it's actually a blow to the Kennedy campaign. For her, I don't really get it. I mean, I've seen that she's been on the short list for Trump. I just have a very hard time believing that. I just don't think he'll ever pick her. I can't see it.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the only thing I can figure too, is that maybe she's holding out hope that she ends up being Trump's VP. And so she thinks she's got a better horse in Trump than in RFK Jr.
There's just no way that he would pick her. I mean, it would piss off so many parts of the Republican coalition. I mean, look, outside of the online, people don't even know who she is. They'll just be like, oh, she's a former Bernie Democrat. I'm not saying that she is, but I'm saying that's what the attack would be. It's just a lot easier and safer for Trump to pick Elise Stefanik, Tim Scott, or J.D. Vance, depending on what
Kristi
Noem, any of these people. Yeah. It's traditional, box check. You know, it's just about being safe. Everything's about Trump anyway.
Tulsi is like the hyper online pick, or like Vivek hyper online pick. But do I actually think Trump has really any serious interest in picking her? No,
I don't think so.
I'm very skeptical of that. With regards to RFK Jr. and a potential Tulsi ticket, you know, obviously both of them are like former Democrats. Yeah. Both of them have way higher approval ratings at this point with Republicans than Democrats. I think if you put Tulsi on the ticket, you are locking yourself more into an exclusively former Trump conservative Republican right-wing base. Nicole Shanahan is a blank slate. You know, she's got more liberal positions in terms of the causes she's funded in the past and things she's said and supporting Pete Buttigieg and whatever. So it keeps the ticket a little bit more plausibly neutral.
That's true.
So in that way, I actually think it might be a better thing. I think actually Biden should have hoped that he would pick someone like Tulsi, who clearly codes as, right wing. She's filling in on Fox and they love her at this point. So I think that would have made it more clear that the RFK ticket was going to take more from the Trump column. I still actually think it is going to take more from the Trump column because I just continue to look at the approval ratings. Actually, in that Wall Street Journal Battleground State poll that we showed, even though once you add in RFK Jr. and the other candidates and undecided, Trump actually picks up a little bit of ground in all the states. When you just looked at the RFK Jr. support, it actually did in that poll hurt Trump more than it hurt Biden. It's not overwhelming, but it is a little bit of an edge for Joe Biden. So given where his approval ratings are with Democrats, which are really in the toilet, and you have a majority of Republicans who personally like and have an approval, high approval for RFK Jr., I still think at the end of the day, it probably is more of a problem for Trump than it is for Biden. But the Nicole Shanahan pick makes it a little less clear-cut than if he had picked like a Tulsi Gabbard or someone else who really codes as right wing at this point.
That's not a bad point. I still think I wish you picked Jesse Ventura. I still think that would have been.
Oh, that would have been a crazy wild card.
I told this to Ryan. I said, I love that guy because he's all over the place. And he's an OG if you are anti-establishment.
But Jesse is such a big person. He can't be in
so
anyone's number two. He's such a big personality. Having interviewed him, and he just takes over, let me tell you.
I love him, man. I love him.
Such a character.
I was reading 9/11 conspiracy theory books in College Station in my mid-teens because of Jesse Ventura.
But I also feel like I kind of doubt that Jesse and RFK Jr. are in the same place with regard to Israel and Palestine. That would be hard, hard for me to imagine. But I haven't seen him weigh in there specifically, Jesse Ventura. But I would imagine that would be a major rub. And we know that's been a rub for, some previous RFK Jr. campaign staffers who were with him when he was, against the Ukraine war and wanting to stop funding there and thought he was like, oh, this is an anti-war candidate. And then suddenly October 7th happens and he's on the total opposite end of the anti-war positioning for that. And that was very disillusioning for a number of his staffers who left and who explained that was the reason that they left. And also for a number of previous supporters who had been interested in him genuinely occupying that anti-war space and, saw that as diametrically opposed to the way he positioned himself in Israel.
Yeah, so the last time that he's made the news in the last 6 days is he has now joined forces with a local bakery to launch his own brand of THC edibles. So it looks like Jesse's living his best life.
God bless.
It appears.
God bless.
I don't support the products, but I will always support you, Jesse. God.
There was one more interesting piece on this RFK Jr. There was Washington Post talked to a number of RFK Jr. supporters. We can put this up on the screen. This is, B3. So they talked to a number of people who said, they're all in for RFK Jr. and they were kind of all over the political spectrum. The one thing they had in common, unsurprisingly, is they all hate Biden and Trump, which, is a pretty common sentiment out there in America. And I think speaks to the wisdom of like the Super Bowl ad that he ran.
Absolutely.
And the general attempt, like what we've been saying is probably his strongest lane, is to try to be as vague and neutral as possible and just be a vessel for as many people as possible who just hate both of these candidates and, want someone else and aren't too concerned about all of the details.
So according to his campaign, here's what he's got so far. He's got New Hampshire, Hawaii, Nevada, North Carolina. They say they're on track for a few others.
But are those places, do they specify there that he has actually made the ballot or where he's collected enough signatures?
Enough signatures, not made the ballot. He's only made the ballot in one state.
In Utah, right? Yeah.
Right. And that's not going to matter, unfortunately. Everywhere else actually will matter, and when he actually does get that ballot access, that's going to be the big thing. But, I mean, that is where, maybe I'm coming back to Nicole Shanahan. She's got a ton of money. She's been given, I think she's got $1 billion or something like that. 25, 50 million. That'll probably get you on the ballot in a decent number of states. That'll buy you the operation that you need. And if we can just project whatever we want onto the Kennedy-Shanahan ticket, then you're going to ride at least somewhere to a decent percentage of the vote in this. And at the end of the day, I mean, everyone keeps talking about the spoilerism and all of that. He's at this point has had enough, on the record statements against Trump, on the record statements about how he doesn't like others, on the record statements and, always and not necessarily wanting to slip into a lane where he would drop out in order to help Trump, even if you do see polling. And he said previously he's going to F Trump. I think it was in the Theo Vaughn interview and all of that, because the Democrats really do, at least from what I've seen, the DNC, they really have this conspiracy theory that, he is 100% a spoiler back ticket. And I don't see that in the data, and I definitely don't see it in some of the voters that are supporting him.
I mean, I don't really either.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's possible that some of the people who are donating to him,
that's different, right? But that's not
like
the same
they
thing.
may have that in mind. I certainly think that's possible. Himself, I don't really see that either.
I don't see it.
If you were going to design someone who was going to be a spoiler for Biden, I don't think you'd pick RFK Jr. at this point, because like I said, it's really not clear to me that he's going to take more from Biden than from Trump. In fact, again, at this point, even in spite of the Kennedy name and the past positioning, whatever, I do think at the end of the day, his approval ratings are just so much higher with Republicans that it seems like more of a threat to Trump. So if that's the plan, I also think if that's the plan, you wouldn't be asking Tulsi Gabbard to be on your ticket. Right, you would be going immediately to someone who had more sort of liberal or lefty cred to try to win over Biden voters if that was really the whole play, is just to serve as a spoiler. So like I said, I'm not saying there aren't people who are supporting him who have that agenda in mind, but I don't think it's the wisest course if that's ultimately your goal, really. It's much more clear, for example, that Cornel West or Jill Stein would cut into his piece of the pie. So if you're just looking to, move things around nefariously, I think you would put more effort into that end of the ticket. But I don't know.
Who knows?
Like I said, to me, with him personally, it doesn't add up that that's the whole goal of what he's doing. So, ultimately, these Biden and Trump, they got to make their case to the American people and actually win. And you can't cry about RFK Jr. exercising his right to participate in the democracy. And you can't cry about people who hate both of you and really want other options, considering the other options that are available to them.
I hadn't even considered the lame duck argument that he makes there. And I was like, that's not a bad point in terms of if you want actual new leadership. You have 4-year tenures on both of these candidates. It actually is a pretty good one if you think in terms of really wanting something new, and it gets to some of the doom that exists in the election.
Remember Ron DeSantis was trying to make that argument about
Trump?
Was.
Yeah, and he was,
it didn't really work out.
It didn't hit with the primary, but that's a very different electorate.
I don't know. I think the fact, if anything, the fact that we would only be, tortured with one more Biden or one more Trump administration is probably a plus for voters. Not like, oh, darn, I wish we could have him for 8 years. That's such a shame. I don't think anyone out there is really feeling that way. Hey, guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.